So next up, I would like to introduce to you Charlotte Blake Alston. Many people refer to her as the GOAT. I am so grateful to be in her presence this evening. Charlotte Blake Alston is born and bred in Philadelphia. She's been telling stories for several decades. Started off as an educator. She's a mentor. She is also the official host, narrator, and storyteller for the Philadelphia Orchestra. And Charlotte Blake Alston is going to share some of her wonderful work with us tonight. Charlotte Blake Alston.
Praise to the creator of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Praise to the one who allows our hearts to beat in our chests, allows our lungs to draw in the sacred breath of life, allows us to see, to hear, to think, to feel, to speak, so that we might share in the telling of stories. Praise to all of those whose stories have been lost, stolen, not listened to, changed and used as weapons. Praise to all of those whose stories were left in the hulls of slave ships, to all of those whose stories lie at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Praise to all of those whose stories have been silenced in their hearts and in their throats. Praise to all of those who in this moment as we sit are suffering somewhere in the world because they have spoken stories of peace, freedom, and humanity. Praise to all of those who in this moment as we sit are forming in their minds the words, the actions that will bring peace in areas where there is war, where there is hatred and conflict. Praise to all of those ancestors whose collective toil, tears, pain, hopes, struggles, dreams, and prayers beckoned us into existence so that we might speak their stories and speak our own. Chile chonse ungo pangin gati Palibe chikondi Palibe wachita. It was 1988, and I became part of a special program right here in Philadelphia called Operation Understanding. That was created at a time when there was increasing tension between two communities in our city, the African American community, the Jewish community. Two individuals came together. William H. Gray, who at that time was actually Majority Whip in Congress, but who was a minister of Bright Hope Baptist Church, came from a family of ministers, his father, his grandfather. came together with George Ross, who was then the chairman of the American Jewish Committee, and said, how can we respond to this tension? What they came up with was a program that would include students, high school students from both communities, and offer them an experience that was an immersion in culture. The students had to apply, applications and then an interview process, and then 12 students were chosen, equal numbers of boys, equal numbers of girls. And we embarked on a journey across the ocean to Jerusalem, to Israel, to Senegal, and to Gambia on the western part of the African continent. In Jerusalem and Israel, we were able to go into an Arab community and meet with people who were Arab Israeli citizens to talk about the complexities of what it meant to live in such an environment. We visited Neve Shalom or Har Salam, which is a purposeful community of Arabs and Jews living together, surrounded by all kinds of complex conflicts, still making their community work. We got to go to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, where you get to see the lowest form of human cruelty. In Senegal, we took the chaloupe, a small boat, off the coast of Dakar, across to the island of Gorée, where the slave house is. In some countries, they are referred to as castles, slave castles, that dot the landscape along the western coast in Ghana, Ivory Coast, Senegal. And there we walked through the dirt floors, the spirit-filled rooms where people were stored before being led down planks into the hulls of ships, never to see their homelands again. On one of those years, it was 1988, I chaperoned a few years with my students. There were some tensions between Senegal and its northern neighbor, Mauritania. At that time, there was a pretty strong system of slavery in place. The Arabs who were enslaving the darker-skinned indigenous people. And an attempt was made to abolish that system. It was met with violence. And many people crossed over the border of Mauritania into Senegal. Mauritania is Senegal's northern neighbor. And were now refugees in the country of Senegal. Men, women, children, many of them separated from their families. And the person who put together our itinerary in Senegal thought it might be a good experience for our students to go into the refugee camp and take some things with them. This was not on our itinerary, and the itinerary was challenging at times. And I thought this might be a really low point, but she insisted. So she told us there were many children in this refugee camp, and so we went to a store and we bought wiffle balls and bats and Nerf frisbees and footballs and soccer balls and air pumps for the balls and bags and bags and bags of candy. And we got on a van with all of our stuff. The van took us as far as it could go. And then we got off. Everybody grabbed a bag. And we began to walk. And as we walked, I just had my head down, looking at the dust that was rising up from our feet. And I noticed a dust cloud ahead of us. And then there was singing coming from this dust cloud. And as the dust began to clear, we saw children. Children had come from the refugee camp. Now, mind you, this was an area where people were being housed in structures that normally housed grain. The children came into our midst singing, clapping, took our hands, and led us into an area behind one of those structures where there were several hundred more children sitting on the ground. There were some adults opposite the children, and so I took my students there and motioned for them to sit, and there were some women who motioned for them to stand up, and some of the women left the area. We weren't sure what was going on until our translator came and said, "Oh, you are their guests. They want to give you a gift. They want to give you a piece of theater." The women who left came back with fabric, and they spread it down for us. He said they didn't want you to sit on the ground. And so there were our American teenagers who live in luxury and comfort, being made comfortable in a refugee camp. Well, we didn't really understand the language, but it was pretty clear. The skit was about a young chief who had gone to the French schools, to the colonial schools, to learn how to rule his people. He came back with armloads of books, and every time someone would come to him with a problem, he would flip through the pages of the book and try to find this particular problem, and he'd read what the formula was to solve it, and they would follow that direction, and there would be a series of funny mishaps until a Marabout, a spiritual man, came and reconnected him with the ancient ways of doing things, and all was right. In that moment, I thought, we in our Western way of thinking thought these children had nothing, less than nothing. We went to give them something, candy, toys, but without money, without status, without a home. They gave us the most valuable gift of all. They gave us themselves, with joy and with apparently a fundamental understanding that underneath all of the man-made barriers, we are all fundamentally human. So we didn't drop our supplies and leave. I stood in the midst of children and with my translator helped to sing a Ella Jenkins song. Did you feed my cow? Yes, ma'am. Our children, our students played ball with them. We listened to their stories, helped them prepare food. Our girls did hand clapping games. All the while children were coming up to me and tapping me going, yes, ma'am. The song was as treasured a gift as the candy, which was by then